a 4th of July military extravaganza. Courtesy of the president with a penchant for flamboyant spectacle.
We celebrate our history, our people, and the heroes who proudly defend our flag, the brave men and women of the United States military.
This was no campaign speech, as many had feared. Under Lincoln's marble gaze, a well-behaved Trump stuck to the script, which was essentially a military history lesson.
The Army brought America's righteous fury down to al-Qaeda in Afghanistan and cleared the bloodthirsty killers from their caves.
Donald Trump's head was turned by France's Bastille Day. 2 years later, this is his version. Dubbed Salute to America, it delighted his supporters.
I think it's a treat to have the President of the United States involved in the 4th of July celebration.
But his critics see it as more of a show of farce, an ego trip with authoritarian leanings.
Never been more frightened to be in my own country. I feel there's a level of apathy and complacency.
The White House handed out tickets to approved VIPs and Republican Party donors, fueling the anger of those who see it as the politicization of a usually non-partisan holiday. It ended with fireworks donated by a local company. The rest of the bill goes to the taxpayer. Democrats are in outrage mode over this. They insist it's less about America and far more about Donald Trump.
For more on this and a look at all the big stories from the United States this week, we're joined by Bruce Wolpe from the US Study Centre. Good afternoon, Bruce.
Great to be with you in person. Happy July 4th.
Oh, you too, Bruce. So this had all the feelings of a Trump mega rally, but it happened to be less partisan than what people were expecting.
It was not a Trump mega rally, and that's a good thing. He wanted, as our setup piece indicated, he wanted to replicate what was done in Paris on Bastille Day with President Macron, the Champs-Élysées, the Arc de Triomphe, all the troops and the flyover. And he adapted it for Washington. People were afraid it would become a Trump campaign rally, in effect, but it wasn't that. He gave a very bread-and-butter patriotic speech. He honored the armed forces. He celebrated American values. He called out heroes of the country, just as presidents have done in State of the Union addresses. They have people in the gallery who have made achievements in medicine and civil rights and so forth. And so it ultimately worked. Now, is the country more united today because of this event? No, it's as divided as ever before. But what could have been a stain on the political character of July 4th did not occur. Trump feels great about it. He should. And July 5th came after that, so it's okay.
Do you think the tanks were really necessary, though?
I grew up in Washington, D.C., and I love the monuments and the Lincoln Memorial and the mall and so forth. The sight of tanks at the Lincoln Memorial is, to me at least, a disconcerting sight. And it'll be interesting to see. I don't think future presidents will replicate stationing tanks at the Lincoln Memorial, so that might have been a tank too far.
Moving on to the citizenship saga, there's been big debate about allowing citizenship questions in the national census. Now it seems the president may issue an executive order to put it through.
Let's back up and understand what's occurring here. The Constitution declares that there is going to be a census every 10 years. It says you shall count every person, not every citizen. So you count every person. Why is that important? The population of a state determines how many members of the House of Representatives are in it. It also affects spending formulas. So the more people, the more money you get for health and education and stuff like that. So if the census has depressed figures on population, that affects the future of the states. And in a political sense, since migrants tend to be in democratic states, just the way the politics are these days, if you depress the count, that will increase the strength of conservative states. So there's some social welfare issues, and then there are some very heavy political issues. The Supreme Court has said, no, you cannot put this question into the census under the way it was presented. So Trump is trying to figure out a way to get around that. And he may yet issue an executive order saying the census is going to have this question, are you a citizen of the United States? So this has yet to play out, but so it's a constitutional issue, a political issue, and a social issue all wrapped into one.
Well, that needs support of both parties to be able to be pushed through?
No, this will either be done by court order or by the president's executive order. If President Trump cannot convince the Supreme Court that he is right, the question will not be in the census. And this, the census sticks for 10 years. So this was about redrawing the number of seats in the House of Representatives for the next 10 years. And that is also the Electoral College. So a lot is riding on this.
Speaking of citizenship, there's been a legal ruling about the Pentagon funding Trump's border wall. What do you think of that?
Well, there are several. All these issues have a common denominator. Immigration is Trump's #1 issue. It was his #1 issue when he declared for president. He rode down the escalator in Trump Tower and he said, I'm going to build a wall with Mexico and they're going to pay for it. So this is he has sent troops to the border. He has threatened to close the border. He has threatened to have a tariff war with Mexico. And then he declared a national emergency and said, to build my wall, I'm going to go into the Pentagon budget and spend money on that to build the wall. Spending money decisions is an act of Congress under the Constitution. The president cannot unilaterally decide how money is spent. So this is another major constitutional issue. The court has said, Mr. President, what you're trying to do is unconstitutional. You can't spend money like that. This case will also go to the Supreme Court. The other thing we're going to see on immigration this week is that Trump has said that he's going to initiate a series of arrests of illegal immigrants in the United States. There could be hundreds of people around it. By this time next week, there could be thousands of raids and thousands of people deported under raids conducted by the Homeland Security Bureau.
Staying on the border, there's the conditions in some of the detention centres have recently been revealed. Do you think this is going to be a huge issue coming into the 2020 election campaign? It
is a huge issue, and unfortunately it'll be a huge issue because the politics are gridlocked and there won't be a way to solve it. A lot of people are reacting to the conditions of an inspector general in the Homeland Security Department went there and he documented conditions in the camp, and they're pretty ugly. Trump is saying the conditions in the countries they fled from are worse than the conditions in the camp. Too bad. And we're telling you not to come. Don't come. But to other people, they're saying this is a humanitarian crisis, and is this worthy of the United States? The logical solution would be for everyone to get together around a table and figure out immigration laws and kind of solve it. But the politics are really tough, and so tough politics will stick through the 2020 campaign. There will not be a solution to this problem.
No solution in sight at all, you think?
No. Again, it's his #1 issue. It is very important to his base. The more he prosecutes it, the more popular he is in his base. But the contradiction of President Trump, and it goes back to the July 4th rally too, are you bringing the country together and expanding your base? And he's not. So what's going to be tested is the Trump model for governing. Will that be reelected in November 2020? That is the fundamental political question in America today.
Moving on to the race for the White House, a series of pundits have praised Kamala Harris as the star of the debate of night 2. While it wasn't the best night for Joe Biden, it seems to be playing out in the polls. It is playing out in the polls. She's had a big catch-up moment over the past couple weeks. And she's now second or third in the polls. And Biden has come down several points. She's gone up several points. Elizabeth Warren also did very well in the first night of debate, so she's in there. Bernie Sanders still has his base, but he seems to have capped out, but he is still in there. And then Pete Buttigieg, if you can pronounce it, you win a prize. The mayor of South Bend, Indiana, people are looking at him and saying, wow, you're really impressive. We kind of like you. We want to hear more. The thing that gives oxygen to these candidates is money. And Biden has raised a lot of money, $21 million. Buttigieg has raised $25 million. Sanders came in with about $18 million. Harris came in only with $12 million. This is for the quarter to June. But that still makes them all competitive. But yes, Kamala Harris is trying to take the center of the Democratic Party and say to the party, Joe Biden, you've been a great vice president, but you're not tomorrow. I am. So you think she's shaping up to be Biden's biggest threat? I do, and he feels that way too. And the way he's reacting shows that he feels threatened by her. And so he's trying to regain his footing. The next opportunity for them to be on stage together will be at the end of July. There are debates in Detroit. And we will go through these debate events and then resets of the race from now until the end of the year. And I've seen on Twitter this morning Alexandria Cortez, speaking of funding, saying that a lot of money is being wasted on old-fashioned advertising when candidates could be using things like social media. What do you think about that? She's a great exemplar of that. I mean, she's just a congresswoman from New York, and her social media presence, she has, well, just a huge number of followers. And she's influencing the political debate because the Twitter sphere is very important in that respect. I think candidates are, just like campaigns here, adapting to modern reality, and you see much more on social media. You see little videos that go viral. You can never show them
in a three-network world because it's just too expensive, but now you can. So I think candidates say, AOC, how come you're so popular? And then they try and emulate that.
Social media, it's taking over the world, isn't it? Thank you.
I love it.
Thank you so much for your valued opinions. Bruce Wolpe from the US Studies Centre.